Use soap, you filthy, disgusting, hippie, vegan asshole. Sorry, that's not what this video is about. Except, low-key, it really is. Look, I've met and spoken to vegans face-to-face who do not use soap. And, the worst thing is, they think they're doing something bold and edgy and positive for the future of humanity by not using soap, and that makes even less sense. Like, if for some reason you are managing to survive and not spread communicable diseases without using soap, why would that not be something you're quite humble about? Instead of being something you boast about as if you're the one who's made a scientific breakthrough by ignoring the progress of the last couple centuries of science and refusing to use soap. Now, my real point in this video is actually not about the use of soap in isolation, although that is a shockingly important issue for vegans in 2016, I'm sorry to say. Whew, and I've seen a lot of university-educated vegans who get pulled into this maelstrom of misinformation about how not using soap is the greatest thing on earth. Partly because I have this background with Buddhist philosophy and Buddhism. Within Buddhism, there are all these kind of traps, pseudo-logical traps when people talk about politics and social conditions and what have you, where people pretend that anything you say that is extreme must therefore be false. Now, when you're talking about action, when you're talking about intervention, then it's really important to question extremes. When you're talking about logical reasoning, pardon me, when you're talking about testing the validity of a concept, then there's nothing wrong with extremes. In fact, it's really positive to encompass extremes within your set of examples, your set of paradigms. Dramatic pause while I drink this water. So, I remember meeting a guy face-to-face who was vegan, who proudly refused to use soap. And I asked him, when you go to the hospital to have surgery and you choose between two surgeons, do you want to have the surgery performed by someone who does or does not use soap? It's an extreme example, and it's a really useful one. How about the surgeon's knife, the scalpel? Do you want a scalpel that has not been cleaned with soap? All of a sudden, your faith that living without using soap is superior to all of us Luddites, us poor, uneducated people who have gotten with the hip discoveries of science in the last 500 years and are using soap. Suddenly, this is thrown into confusion. You're having to question this from a new and unfamiliar angle. The surgical theater, right? And the next step after this, next question was, if that's what you believe about the surgeon's knife, why don't you believe that about the knives and forks in your own kitchen that you use to eat food from? Why wouldn't you use soap when washing the knife and fork and plate that you eat from? It's the same principle at work here, right? You get different responses from different people. So you're right. I'm doing this with live comments. The excuses people make, the so-called, natural hygiene people, they'll say things like, "Oh, well, but I don't have any acne." Why? You're going to choose your surgeon on the basis of who has acne and who doesn't? Really? I don't give a fuck that you don't have acne, homeboy. I don't. I'm sorry. It's completely irrelevant whether or not you have acne. And people say, "Oh, but I don't smell bad." You're going to choose the surgeon based on who? Completely spurious. Okay, I mean, people are mentioning this stuff like, "Oh, but I don't use soap." Okay. The deeper point here is, yes, when you're thinking these things through, when you're reasoning them through, it's actually really important and worthwhile to work through all the ramifications and implications of what actually refusing soap would entail, what actually a civilization without soap would entail. And is it just that you believe that you can scrape by and not smell awful and not have acne without using soap? Or do you actually want to overturn the progress of science? And you have to adjust your attitude accordingly, as well as adjusting your look accordingly. I remember with this one guy I talked to face to face. He was married, and I asked him very simply, "What about your wife? You know what urinary tract infections are for a woman? You know about female hygiene because you're married?" And he got real uncomfortable. I mean, I could tell right away they have experience with this. Most human beings do. It's like, you're telling me that you put your hands inside your wife's vagina and you haven't washed your hands with soap? You do that on a regular basis? Really? You cool with that? I at the hospital would not let a doctor touch that part of my wife's body with hands that are not washed. Okay? Like wife, girlfriend, whatever. It's very serious business. And you can't say urinary tract infection, even if it just makes someone's life miserable for a couple of days. Nobody wants to go through that, right? I remember, I think it was at that point in the conversation, this guy said to me that he had gone on vacation in India. And where he was in India, nobody uses soap, and they're all happy and healthy, right? Like, oh, case closed. Whoa, man. Whoa, you brought evidence to this debate. But at that time, fresh in my mind were a lot of experiences related to humanitarian work, third world hygiene conditions, and the type of suffering and death that comes from having water that's not clean, hands that are not clean, food that's not clean in Laos, Cambodia, etc., right? And actually, sorry, I'll just digress to mention this. I remember there was a situation at a hospital in Laos, and it was a serious hospital. So it was a hospital that also had a kind of university attached to it. So they did medical, they educated doctors, they trained doctors as well as being a hospital. Not a full university, but it was a combined hospital and teaching hospital setup. And I met and spoke to the English teacher there, the woman who taught the doctors how to read and speak English, or improve their ability to read and speak English. And as an exercise one day, she asked them to write down in English what they thought were the top 5 causes of death in Laos at that time, that year, the current data. And all these doctors, because they used textbooks from the United States or England or France, sorry, I should mention, the elite in Laos, some of them still speak French, some of them still read and write German. So they're not all using American textbooks. Some of them are using German and French textbooks. Very rarely do you meet people using Russian. It's kind of another story about why that is. But anyway, they're using European and Western textbooks. So they wrote down as the top 5 causes of death. They were writing down heart attack, obesity, obesity-related diseases like heart attack and stroke and what have you. And then she said, nope. And she gave them, a photocopied printout of what the actual leading causes of death were. And guess what number 1 on the list was? It's these third world diseases like waterborne illnesses, aka diarrhea. There are really serious, terrible diseases in countries like Laos and Cambodia and Thailand and India that are spread by not washing your hands. And they can kill you. But the vast majority of the time, they just make you very, very uncomfortable for 2 weeks. Okay? And they're no joke. You think tropical diarrhea is a joke? Do you think being bedridden or hospitalized with tropical diarrhea is a joke? It's not. You think even the crummy parasitic ones, the parasitic infections you can get by not washing your hands, they're horrible. You don't want to live through that. You want to wash your hands. You want to get with this soap and hygiene thing we got going on in the 21st. Trust me, the amount of physical suffering you can go through with even the totally non-fatal, non-life-threatening tropical parasitic conditions. Soap, people. Soap is better than this. So this guy says to me, flashing back to this conversation I had with a vegan who doesn't use soap, he says he was in India and nobody there used soap and everyone was happy and had no health problems. This is like the acne thing. Well, I looked at, they look good. You got no acne, so you must be healthy. And, I said to him, how dare you? Have you ever looked once at a government report from India about the number of people who die every year from conditions that could be avoided by washing your hands? Have you looked once, not at the fatalities, because again, many of these conditions are not fatal, or they're not fatal most of the time, about how many hospital beds are taken up with people bedridden ill with conditions like diarrhea and what have you, and these parasitic infections? Have you taken any time whatsoever to look at the endemic disease profile of India and the unbelievable suffering people go through every day, every year, and how much that problem could be improved through using soap, and probably, I mean, India, I'm not an expert in India, and probably the efforts of the government of India to educate people on using soap when they wash their hands, when they wash their dishes, when they wash their forks and knives, and when they wash their food. Even fruits and vegetables, you gotta wash them. But I really said to him, with real passion in my voice at that time, because I'd just come out of doing research in Laos, I said, how dare you? You're spitting on the deaths and suffering of millions of people. And why are you doing it? To glorify a soap-free lifestyle? Like, who are you helping by building up this myth that a life without soap is superior to a life with soap? If you really believe you can live without soap, then when you go to a restaurant, you'd say, hey, you know what? This cup is too clean. Can you give me a glass that wasn't clean with soap? I'd prefer that. That would be better. Okay, and when you go to the hospital, you'd say, no, I don't want any of these, I don't want you to use a syringe that's clean. I don't want you to use knives when you're doing surgery. I mean, no, I don't want a scalpel that's been cleaned with soap. No, you're against soap. And you would be, again, it may be a gross example to you, but you'd be handling your wife's vagina, your girlfriend's vagina without washing your hands, and then you'd be dealing with all kinds of horrible infections that way that are maybe easier to see the cause and effect than with, what you eat leading to illness and so on. If you go back and watch my older videos on Buddhism, one of the simple things I said about Buddhism is, why did I leave the religion? There were a lot of good things about Buddhism. A lot. I did not want to be part of a religion that was built on a lie. Within veganism, I do not want to be part of a political movement that's built on a lie. Not even a little bit. It's true, it's very important to be moderate when you're looking at action, when you're looking at intervention, when you're looking at military options. But we do not want to be moderate in our reasoning. You do not want to say, oh, no. We're not going to look at extreme examples like parasites and communicable diseases and surgery and how to run a restaurant. We're only going to look at whether or not Freelee the banana girl says that her hair and acne improved since she stopped using it. We're only going to use examples from a moderate range that doesn't include scary diseases, operating theaters and hospitals, or how you run a restaurant, or whatever. No. In the process of reasoning, we have to encompass and examine all of the extreme examples. And you know what? That may include a minority of the population who have problems with acne because they're allergic to soap, or they're allergic to their perfumes in their soap. Those may have a real scientific basis also. Broken watch is still right twice a day. I think there are some people who have legitimate allergies or other health problems for why they struggle with using soap in our soap-dominated modern world. But don't try to bullshit me, son. Because I am not going to be part of a political movement that's based on a lie. Not a lie about eating unlimited calories without gaining weight. Not a lie about garlic being a neurotoxin. Not a lie about finding a cure for Crohn's disease. And not a lie about soap.